el trabajo de Erling Larsen se centra en cuestiones relacionadas con la calidad del sector pesquero. Además, está involucrado en el desarrollo de un sistema de trazabilidad sostenible para el sector pesquero danés. Tiene varias publicaciones científicas, 3 libros, fue coordinador de distintos proyectos de los programas marcos de la Unión Europea, además de proyectos del Plan Nacional danés. Ha trabajado en la elaboración de informes para el Ministerio danés de Alimentos, Acuicultura y Pesquerías, también para otras organizaciones. Es miembro de varios comités como el del Fondo Europeo de Pesquerías, y en la actualidad es consultor jefe de distintas instituciones como la Universidad Técnica de Dinamarca, y además es socio del proyecto del H2020 de la Unión Europea, DiscardLess. So, when you're ready, you can start now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? But if I walk away from the microphone, you will not be able to hear me. So I have to stand very still, and I'm not used to that. Sorry. So if I go away, you just say, go back. But I will try to entertain you for the next 20 minutes. So, and it's quite a challenge to try to present a project of 5 million euros with a lot of partners and a lot of activities in 10 minutes, and then I will try to concentrate on one of our work packages for the last 10 minutes. And by the way, I have worked in the ministry, Danish Ministry of Fisheries, and I have had the first speaker, Mogens Skov, as my boss for 4 years. That does not mean that we totally agree on everything, but I will come back to that a bit later. So, this is the content of my presentation. I will say something about DiscardLess, something about the idea behind it, how the first year has gone, because we started 1 year ago, a little bit more than 1 year, and the challenges as I see it now in the project. And then I will talk a bit of the clusters of VP5 and VP6, work package 5 and 6, but mainly focusing on work package 5, which is on-board handling until first time of sail. I will say a bit about experience from other regions, other countries, and then a bit about a Danish project. It's only say Danish here, and for an American that will be a pastry, so sorry for that. And then a bit about the challenges specifically in these 2 work packages. So, previous experiences. There has been landing obligations. It's not a new invention. It has been in function for several decades. But if you look at the examples, and I will come back to that a bit later, it's mainly in the cold waters of the world. It's in the north or in the south. And in the south, I mean around New Zealand, for instance. And what is characteristic for these waters are not many species, but a lot of amount of fishes in each species. It's not like when you have warmer water, you have a row of species, up to 50, 60, maybe 100. And it's much more an effort to sort and to handle all these species. So, in my opinion, landing obligations or ban of discard has started in the areas where it has been most easy. In the DiscardLess, we have different regional case stories. So we cover from the Azores over the Gulf of Lion in the Mediterranean, the Bay of Biscay, the Channel, the North Sea, the Irish Sea, and in the Icelandic waters. And of course, some of you will say Icelandic waters, they are not member of the EU, no, but they are serving as a kind of example that we can learn from. And what we are doing is that we have a lot of disciplines we have put together. It's very classical. Sorry to say so, but we are scientists and we have a classical approach to things. So after we have used all these kind of disciplines, we come up with a synthesis. And of course, we are modern, so we are involving the stakeholders. The stakeholders, what is that? That is one who has a stake in what's going on. And is that everybody in the sector? Yes. Is it everybody who is just mention fish in what they are doing? Yes. So it includes politicians and NGOs and whatever. So everything is included, and of course it's a challenge. One of the challenges is to have all these opinions meeting in a fruitful way with a good result. It's a bit too early to know whether we have been over-ambitious or not. But it's always like that in scientific projects. You are promising a lot of things, and you are asked to foresee the results which you will come up with in 5 years. It's one of the things that has always puzzled me with scientific projects, because we are not saying, oh, we will look into it, and the result, we will come up with something in 5 years. No, here we have to foresee what we are coming up with. But hopefully we're doing that. We know for a fact that the Commission, the EU Commission, are very aware of what we are doing, and we think we have a bit of influence of what's going on these days. As I said, it's a very traditional project, but you can always describe traditional projects in a way that is complicated. So this is a circle going round, but what you can see on top is we have tried to make it a bit more simple. There is some multi-scale baselines and assessments. That's in the top of the figure. And then there is some how to avoid unwanted catches. What are you doing there? Gear technology and adaptation of your strategy as a fisherman. That means behavior. And then if you are so unlucky to have fish on the deck that you don't want, you have to bring them ashore due to the landing obligation. And then we have to find out how to do that in the optimal way and how to use the fish. A bit like the project we just heard. Of course, nothing is new. We are just inventing the wheel once more, but hopefully in a bit better way. So, but it's one of the options why I'm here. That is to learn from other projects, so we don't have to invent the wheel maybe more than twice or 3 times. And what is sticking these different clusters together is some transversal themes. And to make a very long story very short, what we are focusing on is, of course, dissemination and outreach. And how do we do that? I will come back to that in a second. But before that, I have given it a bit of thought. What is the scene, what is the stage we are working in? And who is acting there? There's a political system, the society. What is that? That is, in fact, the voters. The one who vote for the politicians. And it's the NGOs. And then you have the ecosystem and the resources. What is that? That is the biologists or the international bodies who is looking after these things. And then, last but not least, that's the economic systems and the fisheries. That means business and the right to do as they used to. So, are they working together? Can we make a consensus between these three big areas or not? Yeah, time will show, but we will, of course, do our best. So, and we are very aware of that. And what would be the outcome of DiscardLess? Hopefully, it would be a catalog, an internet solution where a fisherman or somebody else in the sector can go in, get some good ideas of what has been doing in other regions, in other countries, and trying to combine this. Somebody would say, yeah, but that is what we normally do. Yes, but all of us, including myself, who is the son of a fisherman, and I've been a professional fisherman myself, is that sometimes you cannot even learn from the trawler next to you. So how can you learn something from a trawler that is based in the next harbor, or in the next region, or in the next country? It's spreading. Something is spreading very quickly, but other things are spreading very slowly. So this is an approach to have a collaboration between the fisheries, the fishermen, and the research and development. And hopefully we can get something out of that that would be benefit for the fishermen and for the industry as such. And we have, of course, giving it a fancy name. It's called Discard Mitigation Strategies, short DMS Toolbox. So, there is, if you look at this, there is a development from here and down here. I hope you can see the arrow are moving, and from here and down that way. So it meets down there in the corner where the toolbox is. First of all, we have to have an overview. Then we have to avoid the catches of unwanted fish species. And then we have to make optimal use of the unavoidable, unwanted fish species. So that is more or less what the DMS toolbox is. And now I will try to concentrate a bit about the onboard and onboard activities. We have started off making a kind of state-of-the-art report. How surprising, but that's where we have to start. We have to know the baseline. And what we have been doing is that we have been looking into all these kind of aspects. Everything from high grading, you know, where you are only taking the best, the most vulnerable fishes with you back home and throw the rest out again, to choke species, which Mogens Skov described. Choke is that, it's strangulation. It's a kind of strangulation. Fishery stops if you don't have a quota for a certain fish species. I think it's a very dramatic word when it comes to it. And then slipping. Slipping is something that takes place primarily in the purseine fisheries for small, fatty, pelagic fishes. And whatever. But here, this is something to learn from. There's a list here of the countries who had put landing obligation into actions. Start with Iceland in 1977, ending up with Alaska in 1998, all of them in the last century, the previous century. And what was the result if you're trying to take the conclusions out of that? That is that things takes time. Some things takes more time than others. And this really takes time. So the the implementation, creation of efficient infrastructure, just to have that in place, and the management measures. And this MCS, I was a bit wrong to the translators. It means, of course, monitoring, control, and surveillance. And that you have to have in place. So, but the next bullet point, which is maybe not a bullet point, but an arrow here. It took Iceland 30 years to reduce discards to 1 to 2%. It's something. And this is the real figures. It's not something political figures or mismatch figures which we are operating with at the moment. We all know that. I don't have to say it aloud. I don't hope so. So, in Norway, it's between 1 to 5%. In Norway, they have one of their major tools is that if there's too much discard in one area, or they are catching too much of small fishes, the fishing boats are ordered to move away immediately. And it's functioning. But Norway has a lot of waters and fishing grounds, so it's not that a problem for them as it is where you have a lot of fishing boats in a small area. But it's functioning in Norway, partly officially. And one thing you have to think about that. When discarding becomes illegal, it also becomes more difficult to monitor the discards. Because suddenly it's moved from an open area to something which is dark, closed. So that is the conclusions of these bans. I will just draw your attention to some of the projects going on. This boat here, let's see, here. It's a Danish trawler. It's part of a Danish experiment, and we are just working on it. Yesterday, I attended a workshop where we had the preliminary results of what was going on now, because this trawler is fishing in the North Sea for plaice, and we have now 2 species that are not allowed to throw out, even if they are undersized fishes, that is plaice and haddock. And to our really, really big surprise, the amount of unavoidable, unwanted catch of these 2 species, fish species, was next to nothing. And I have put an observer, a person on the vessel, for just standing there and looking what they were doing. So in some fisheries, some métiers, then there can be a very clean fishing. The other reason why I put an observer on board was that he was making time studies. So we can compare it with the next year and the year after, when there are much more fish species in the landing obligations, because we have to rebuild part of this vessel. Anyway, here, this is a bass trawler. We saw this spring. This down here is an Icelandic stern trawler, and this one here is a new trawler, which is more inspired by French building way of building trawlers. And these ones, we are going to find out how they can have their handling operations adapted to this landing obligation. Some years ago, we made a study and summing up the result of discard in 2010. Based on these figures, it's in Danish waters. Based on these figures, we thought a lot of fish would be landed when we have the landing obligation in action. As you can see, 5,681 tons. Yeah, that's really around 6,000 tons. But I don't think that will be the case, not at all. But at that time, the fish species that was in question was shrimps, rays, and angle sharks, and cod. And you know, one of the reasons why we have this landing obligation is because of the cod stocks fate in the North Sea. But it's not part of the landing obligation until 2019. It's a bit awkward. I have said a bit about this Danish project, but there's one thing, and that's really my personal opinion about this landing obligation. I've tried to find a good example of describing this to people who does not understand anything about fishing. And it is like having a legislation saying you're only allowed to drive with 110 kilometers per hour on the motorways. And the police should control it. But the police is not allowed to have any apparatus or measurements to control it. They can only look at the cars passing them. And then they can say, this one was maybe speeding, this one was maybe inside the speed limit. That is the present situation. We don't have any way to control what is coming on board the vessels, because we are missing the way that, for instance, in Alaska, there is an observer on board every fishing vessel, the bigger fishing vessels. We have tried CCT cameras. It's functioning, it's working. So I have to agree with my former boss that things are not coming the right way because the politics are not following the way that the introduction of this policy goes on. But that is because the policy has another reason than to regulate the fishing. No, it's to fulfill the wishes of us as voters and citizens in the European society, because we don't want good fishes to be thrown overboard. At the same time, we are not allowed to eat it. So yesterday, I came up with a good idea. This vessel here, who is fishing plaice, and a lot of plaice, if they have undersized plaice, why don't you dry it and use it as pet food for your dogs? Because one of the main feed for pets like dogs is dried ears from the pigs. In Denmark, we are slaughtering about, 28 million pigs every year, and the ears of the pigs was used to be dried and fed to the pets, and it was quite expensive. But we don't have them anymore, because there was some Chinese who come around and saw them and said, we would like to buy that, we make soup of it. And now all the pig ears are exported to China. So we have to find a substitute. And at the time we thought that we could have a ray, a tawny skate or something like that, but they have spikes on, just like a rose. The dogs liked the product dried. The owners did not like it. So of course they were not buying it. So now we will try, I think, with a small plaice. So that's one of the outcome, and hopefully you will hear a bit more about the ideas we have for the use of these amount of fish that is brought to shore because of the landing obligation. Thank you very much.